Good morning. It is Wednesday, May 13th, and the title of this morning's devotional is Worldwide Famines. You know, a subject matter like this, if you just kind of keep it to the Bible and talk about prophecy, I would be able to sit here and give you answers and to give you scriptures and to talk about that. But when it starts hitting reality in our world and what it looks like, and when we really try to figure out how we become a part of the solution that God has for this time period, then it becomes much more difficult. When you look at famines throughout the eons, you're going to see that there seems to be not a time period in our world that there hasn't been part of our world that has suffered from a famine. I would encourage you to do a little search on worldwide famines or famines. There's just lists of famines that will literally boggle your mind. And in those lists, they talk about causes. And it is very interesting what can begin the whole cycle of events that brings about a famine. It could be like where we are right now. This pandemic has shut down industry. That industry has all began to make a domino effect, and now you have problems. Do we have a shortage of meat in this country? The answer is no, we don't have a shortage of meat in this country. But when you shut down a processing plant, all of that backs up, and now you've got mass slaughter of cattle that are being buried in large graves. You have up north, you have huge volumes of potatoes that are just being stockpiled. And so this can create an issue. Now we know that this is really going to create a very real issue in northern Africa. So we know that there are issues there. So what is the solution? Now this is the difficult part, and I don't want to pretend that this is a simple problem, because it is not a simple problem. There are many facets to this. Many facets, and I don't pretend to have a ironclad solution. So we're going to look at the problem as it relates to the Bible and see what it is that we're supposed to do, because we know that when we have tried to handle this, maybe even as religious people in the church, there'll be those that are scammers, and there'll be those that are fakes and fraudulent and try to manipulate the church, and then it causes us to be jaded, and we don't need that. What we need is a biblical view. Those that are scammers, let God deal with them, but we need to be responsible for ourselves. Now the scriptures say, and here we are in Matthew 24:7, and we've read this the last 2 months, probably more than we've ever read this. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom shall rise against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. And so we've talked a lot about pestilence. I've mentioned earthquakes quite a bit. This verse also talks about famines. The second verse that's in this passage is Revelation 6:6, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts saying, a measure of wheat for a penny, and a measure of barley for a penny, and see that they hurt not the oil and the wine. We know that as we approach the tribulation, that a loaf of bread will be at the price of a day's wage. And what we've just been through, which our country has not been through anything quite like this in my lifetime. The only other shortage I can remember was the gas wars in the 70s. But this was very different. And so you can see that even though that we seem rather pompous, and whether we seem very self-confident, that something like this can rattle our world. Unless you trust in the Lord. You've got to put your hope in the Lord. Now, how can I be a part of the solution in something that just seems to be so overwhelming? Full well knowing that there are people that have no problem with parts of this world suffering famine. What can I do? Well, first, you got to get your heart right. Because if your heart's not right, you're never going to once this passes, you're going to move on. And maybe what you have to see is you have to really see famine and starvation for yourself. Not just on TV. As a kid, when I was growing up, there was commercial after commercial after commercial of those Cambodians. Apparently, my parents saw the Chinese suffer because I had to eat my dinner because of the Chinese. So we never responded to their need. We just ate more. And that's not really the proper response. In Isaiah, we see Isaiah 58, verse 6, it says, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of the wickedness, and to undo heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, that ye have broken every yoke?" Now look at verse 7 here. It says, "Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that they bring the poor that cast thou out of thy house?" So you see that if I sacrifice, now there's enough for others. We have the distinct privilege of living in the breadbasket of the world. This is an amazing place, the San Joaquin Valley, and we see that the volume of produce that is generated from this valley is mind-boggling. God is good, and God has created soil and resources that we might take care of ourselves. It echoes back to the garden. But we need to realize that there's another force working in this thing. And we need to not just be neutral, even in things as simple as this. Ask God to make our hearts tender. Ask God to give us eyes that we can see. This is not a simple thing to navigate through. How can I help? I'm so thankful for so many of you that are always thinking about other people. When you buy, it isn't just to hoard onto yourself, it's that you might help other people. But oh, that we might help others that are truly in need. Oh, that we might ask God to really expand our vision and our view, that we would see all people as He does. Oh, that we would have compassion to those that are truly in need. May you ask God to open your heart and your eyes this day, that you might see how you might be used of Him, and so that you might go to Matthew 7, and when He says, "And when I was hungry," that was you that reached out. May God bless you this day. We have a wonderful God, and we live in a world that is heading for a day of judgment. Let us prepare for that. May God bless you today.